So I mentioned that many research groups around the world started to incorporate biomarkers, multimodality biomarkers, into their research programs, and it became obvious pretty quickly that they had diagnostic value. And so there were two different groups then that incorporated biomarkers. So in controversies, what were some of the controversies? There were a number of controversies, but the biggest one was around this, and that is, what is the definition of Alzheimer's disease? How should the term be used? I mean, look at any other disease, and if you have a biomarker of that disease, it's called a disease, whether or not someone has symptoms, right? If someone has a cancer identified on screening mammography, who is completely asymptomatic, they've never felt a lump, do they not have breast cancer? You know, if someone has a tumor in the colon on screening colonoscopy, they've never had a symptom in their life. Do they not have a disease until they have colonic obstruction?
So I've always had this strong conviction that obviously if we can see the microstructure, and that relates to your point about sensitivity of the actual assessment method, but if we can detect a change at that level, then we should gain traction on the question much earlier in the process. And so I think we certainly take the view, because we do have a diffusion-based approach. It's not noddy, but we have our own approach, which is sort of similarly, we would say, kind of separates the curves, as it were, and gains access to microstructural change somewhat earlier in the process, which I think is powerful.
So yeah, I mean, both the points that you raise, one, I agree with everything you said. Two, we've tried to incorporate it into these models, but I mean, the point you're making about much greater sensitivity of neuropathology than anything that has been or realistically ever will be available in vivo. That's what I've tried to indicate with this detection threshold. The reality is that this detection threshold, I mean, it might be up here, but it's just hard to draw this stuff on here. But the reality is, as you have correctly pointed out, there's so much sensitive structural and molecular change that the neuropathologists can see